Hey guys, okay. I'm still at school this afternoon and I'm windblown from being out at recess, but I'm gonna put lessons 95 and 96 into one video for you because they go together, and we've already covered this a little bit in previous lessons. Today we're just giving what we've talked about in previous lessons a name. Okay, and that name is this word right here, reciprocals. Okay, so if we switch the numerator and denominator of a fraction, so say I have 3/4, okay? If I switch the terms of this fraction, here's one term and here's another term. My numerator and my denominator are the terms of this fraction. If I switch them around and make them 4/3, I've now made an opposite fraction or an inverted fraction, and this is the reciprocal of 3/4. Okay, so all the reciprocal is when I invert these two numbers, flip the terms of my fraction and make it the opposite. That is a reciprocal, okay? So the reciprocal always has the same terms. We're not switching 3 and 4, it's still 3 and 4. We're just flipping them, okay? And when we reverse the positions of the terms, we've just inverted the fraction to form the reciprocal. Okay, any number, any whole number can also have a reciprocal. So if I have the whole number of 2, for instance, okay, first of all, I have to figure out, in order to find the reciprocal, what would a fraction be that is 2? How do you make any whole number a fraction? You put it over 1. Okay, so if you put the whole number 2 over 1, it's still equal to 2, but now we have it in fraction form. So now that it's in a fraction form, I can find the reciprocal of this whole number. So all I have to do is flip those terms, invert this fraction, and my reciprocal is half, okay? 2 over 1 becomes 1/2. That's the reciprocal, okay? So remember, when you're making any whole number into a reciprocal, first make the whole number into a fraction by putting it over 1, and then you can flip your fraction, invert the terms to make its reciprocal, okay? Let's see. That's really it for lesson 95. Lesson 95 is simply understanding what a reciprocal is. For instance, if we had done this in class together today, this worksheet that we normally would practice on is simply asking you to make reciprocals. So some of your lesson practices, when you do lesson practice 95, it's just gonna ask you to write the reciprocal. It's very simple, so don't make it hard, okay? The reciprocal of 3/7 is going to be 7/3. You're just gonna flip the terms, that's it, okay? Don't make it hard, okay? A reciprocal is simply an inverted fraction, flipping the terms in your original number to make them opposite or inverted, okay? That is lesson 95. Now, we use reciprocals when dividing fractions. So this is important, okay? Where's my eraser? We want to know what a reciprocal is because in lesson 96, we talk about dividing fractions. So here I have 1/2 divided by 2/3, okay? Well, I know how to multiply fractions. If this were a multiplication sign, I would just multiply my numerators and then I would multiply my denominators, and I would end up with 2/6, right? But this is dividing, it's not multiplying. So what do we do, okay? This problem means how many 2/3 are in 1/2. That's what this problem is saying. Anytime you see a division sign, you almost want to read it backwards. This means how many 2/3 are in half, okay? That's how you read this. And in order to figure that out, we change the question. We flip the problem into a multiplication problem. So we're actually going to kind of do 2 steps, okay? So step 1, how many 2/3 are in 1? Okay, why would we do this? How many 2/3 are in 1? The answer would be 3/2, okay? One thing I want you to understand is that any fraction, 2/3 for example, its reciprocal, what's the reciprocal of 2/3? It's just 3/2, makes it equal to 1. Sorry, that should be. Anytime we have a fraction times its reciprocal, we're going to get a fraction, a whole number answer of 1, okay? So let's ask ourselves, how many 2/3 are in one whole? Well, I know that there would be 3/2 2/3 in one whole, because the opposite or the reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2, and that equals 1. Okay, so that's my first step. Okay, how many 2/3 are in one? The answer is 3/2. I just made my reciprocal. That's all I did. Okay, now step number 2 is we're going to change this division sign now to a multiplication sign. Okay, so we've now changed 2/3 to 3/2. It's reciprocal. And now we can just bring down our first fraction is half, and now we have half times 3/2. Now we can do multiplication. We're still doing a division problem, but we've done 2 steps. We've changed our second fraction, always the second fraction, to its reciprocal, and we've changed the dividing sign into a multiplication sign. Now we multiply. 1 times 3 is 3. Sorry, my marker's running out. 2 times 2 is 4. So how many 2/3 are in half? The answer is 3/4. Okay, let's do one more of those to help give you a little more confidence in this. It's really not difficult. Let's try a whole number one. Okay, let's do 2 divided by 2/3. Okay, so this, we're actually going to make 3 steps because we're starting with a whole number. Okay, and so what do we do when we have a whole number? We make it into a fraction by putting it over 1. So we're going to say 2/1 divided by 2/3. Now, that's just asking how many 2/3 are in 2, or how many 2/3 are in 2/1. Okay, so now my second step, or now that I have a fraction on both sides, my first step is to make a reciprocal out of this second number. So now I'm going to say 2/1 divided by, I'm going to invert this fraction to make a reciprocal, 3/2. And now that I've made a reciprocal, the division sign becomes multiplying. So the first fraction stays the same, and I make my division sign into a multiplication sign because I've made the reciprocal out of the initial fraction. And now we solve. 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 2 is 2. And we get 6/2. Now, am I going to leave an improper fraction as my answer? No, 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 I am not. Okay, we have to make it a whole number or a mixed number answer. So if you don't know, 6 divided by 2, you get 3, right? You can put 6, always put the numerator in the house when it's bigger and divide it by the denominator. Okay, let's try one more. When you get to your lesson practices, when you get to your lesson practice homework for lesson 96, it's just going to give you a bunch of division problems. I think it's like A through I. And then 2, J and K, are going to be in sentence form. So it's going to ask you how many 1/3 are in 3/4. Okay, so make sure you read that backwards. How many 1/3? That's going to be my second number. How many 1/3 are in 3/4? When it writes it out to you, when it writes it out for you in words, make sure that that first fraction that is spoken is the second fraction in your division problem. So it'll look like this. How many 1/3 are in 3/4? Okay? And so your 1/3 is going to be your second number in your division problem. Okay, because that's how we read division problems backwards. So when you're reading it this way in a word problem, remember to write it this way on your paper. Okay, now let's solve this. How many 1/3 are in 3/4? Well, step 1, make the reciprocal. I never, ever, ever make the first fraction a reciprocal. I always make my second fraction a reciprocal. My first fraction is always going to stay the same. Reciprocal of 1/3, I just flip these, I flip my numerator and my denominator into 3/1. And now I can change my division sign to a multiplication sign because I've now made my reciprocal. Once you make your reciprocal, that division problem becomes a multiplication problem. So 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 1 is 4. 9/4 is an improper fraction, so we don't leave it that way. I'm going to put 9 in the house and ask myself, how many times will 4 go into 9? Well, it'll go twice. 4 times 2 is 8. Now I subtract. 9 minus 8 is 1. So here's where I get my mixed number answer. Remember, my remainder always becomes my numerator, and my divisor always becomes my denominator. So our final answer is, make sure you can see it still, 2 1/4 is our final answer. Okay, I hope this is helpful to you, and there will be lesson videos coming yet for lesson 97 and lesson 98. And just to make sure you know, just to make sure I know that you are watching these videos, I'm telling you all a secret code word right now, or a secret riddle, or a secret whatever. I'm gonna do it at the end of each video to make sure you watched. And I'm going to tell you all that I will be somewhere else this spring break. So when I come back and see you after spring break and ask you all to write down on paper where Miss Fisher was spring break, you can say, Michigan. I was in Michigan. Okay, so just make sure you know I was in Michigan. That tells me you watched the math video. Okay, have a good one.